My father and mother, Fergus and Mary Gorman, lived in a seaport along the coast of Ireland called Belfast. Father was a carpenter who helped build sailing ships. I was born in 1845, the year the Great Famine began in Ireland. In our Irish language, it was known as Gort the Mór, the Great Hunger. The rest of the world knew it as the Irish Potato Famine. It was a terrible time in Irish history. A disease ravaged potato crops across the country for 5 years. Potatoes were the main food for millions of poor Irish people. When the potatoes withered and rotted in the ground, thousands of Irishmen starved and died too. Many others, about 1 million all told, sought other places to live. My father was one of those people. He joined thousands of Irishmen who chose to cross the great Atlantic Ocean and settle in a land called America. People said it was a land of opportunity, a place where anybody, no matter how poor they were, could start a new life and live out their dream. A big city called New York was supposed to be a good place to get a start. I was too young to remember the trip across the ocean, but it must have required a lot of strength and faith in God to survive. Mother didn't talk much about it as I was growing up, but I do remember her saying how packed the boat was with passengers and how badly the ship rocked back and forth in the rough seas. People became ill, some died. Mother remembers undertakers waiting at the docks in New York with empty coffins for the Irish people who never made it to the promised land. We were some of the lucky ones. We arrived in America with hundreds of other people from Ireland and Scotland and England. New York had more people than Belfast. Places to live were hard to find. We had to survive on the streets until Father got a job. 4 days after we arrived, Father was hired as a carpenter at the ship docks. 1 week later, he used his first pay to rent a small room in a tenement house. It was very crowded, but it was the only thing Father could afford. Our life in America had begun. None of us liked living in New York. It was crowded, dirty, and dangerous. Gangs roamed the streets, and fires were always a threat. I don't know how Father did it, but he saved enough money from his job at the ship docks to buy a mule and wagon and take us to Pennsylvania, where Father hoped to become part of the thriving canal business. It took us 4 days to cross New Jersey and arrive at a big river called the Delaware. On the other side of the river was Pennsylvania. We crossed the Delaware on a long, wide raft called a ferry, which landed at a little town called Williamsport. Williamsport was nestled on a corner of the Delaware's shoreline, where it was joined by a second river called the Lehigh. There was a long dam that stretched across the Lehigh from Williamsport to a big town called Easton. Father's face shined when he drove our wagon up a hilly road overlooking the dam. He could see 2 canals, one going up along the Lehigh River and the other following the Delaware River. Each canal was full of boats. "Mary," he told my mother as he pointed to the scene below, "someday you and I are going to own a boat like one of those. It'll bring us a good life." We left Williamsport and followed a wagon road along the Lehigh River. Our mule, Conan, pulled us several miles until the road became a long covered bridge that spanned the Lehigh. On the other side was a little town with one of the canals we had seen in Easton going right through it. Father whistled to Conan, and the mule took us across the bridge. We were greeted on the other side by a wooden sign that read, "Welcome to Freemansburg." Mother knew from the look on Father's face that this is where we would settle.